My name is Jamie Holcombe. I'm the CIO at the USPTO. And PTO does not stand for paid time off. It's actually the Patent and Trademark Office. So I've been there for 4 years. It only seems like 28. No, dog years, right? So what I want to talk about is what we've actually been doing with artificial intelligence at the USPTO, and to ensure that y'all know we're not just regular government bureaucrats. We don't just stamp it out. All right, that's the biggest thing I want to convey. The message is government can be innovative given the right leadership. It just takes courage, and it takes technical courage. And why do I say that, technical courage? Because so often our leaders get bamboozled by all these words, the technical jargon. So one of the cliches that I tell my folks who report to me is, if you can't explain it to your grandmother, then you don't know what you're talking about. And I make sure they take that to heart, because we are talking about a lot of things that are very, very important in the future. And that is artificial intelligence. First thing, I do not believe there is such a thing as general artificial intelligence. Arnold Schwarzenegger is not going to drop down, and Skynet is not going to be taking over our lives. And why do I say that? I've been doing computer science for over 30 years. I actually programmed in Lisp, one of the first AI programming languages. It stunk. It was really bad. And I will tell you that the only thing I have seen in programming is the ability to create algorithms that are very fast and can access huge data sources, which heretofore we have not been able actually to delve into and gain insight. That's why there's all this viral rush around AI. It really is just advanced machine learning. And I say that because that sets the context then for what I'm going through. What I do is we take ideas and then we create action. What good is an idea other than to dream and just to sit there and lollygag and feel good? Oh, that's so nice. Doesn't everybody feel good? Kumbaya. No, we need results. That's the business part of the government, all right? We need to go from ideas to action. So in order to do that, people need to have a clear understanding of what you're trying to do and get at. What I'm trying to do and get at is one simple thing, my mission. My mission is to award patents and register trademarks. Period. End story. That's it. I don't take one dime of taxpayer money. It's all fees. So I have an obligation, a fiduciary, to the fee payers all around the world to make sure that we're spending that money in the right way, in the most productive way, in the most efficient way. Better, cheaper, and faster than anybody else. That's part of the commercial aspect of the USPTO. Hey, we're a bunch of lawyers and engineers, right? We're digit head, we're geeks. And I tell you, I can't stand the lawyers because they think they can do their job, my job, better than I do it, right? Shakespeare said, what's the first thing to do? Get rid of the lawyers. Another thing altogether. But when you set the vision and create clarity around what you're trying to do, all of a sudden people grab onto that and they go forward. So that's what I've been trying to do. And 2.5 years ago, I set out to use artificial intelligence in our searching, in our classification, and in our fraud detection. The 3 use cases that I have to present to you. And in order to do that, I had to organize people and processes around that. So we created product teams, especially the emerging technology product team. And in this team, we take new technology, new tools, new innovations, and we run them through the barrel, try to see if they actually work. But just because they work in the small doesn't mean they work in the large. And so what you have to do is you have to pilot and prototype it. Then you have to actually release it to your users and get their feedback. It's the fast, rapid prototyping that you're all familiar with in the internet age. Hey, we get updates on our phone every night. Why isn't the government updating their software overnight? That's what we need to do. And that's what we're trying to do at the USPTO. So, scaling is a big deal. In our emerging technologies, not only do we prove that it can work in the small, but then we scale it into a production environment. Believe it or not, we have 9 petabytes addressable. You know how much that is? For every examiner to figure out if something is unique and novel, never been thought of before, and it's not currently being patented elsewhere. That's a pretty big job. That's a pretty big duty. That's a lot of performance and a lot of horsepower and storage. So we have to scale it and make sure it goes. What we do is we release it to a bunch of friendlies, people that we know would like to accept it and are willing to go through the change problems that happen whenever you introduce new software. Oh, I don't like this, I don't like that. The button's over here, it's over there. And our examiners, believe it or not, are very picky. So what we do is we introduce it to the friendlies, maybe 100 examiners. Then we introduce it to 300 after they've given our feedback. And we keep going and going until now we have over 50% of our examiners using our AI search tool. So the whole thing about it is our examiners are actually using it without knowing. Now, of course, we told them, but we've integrated into it such that it augments them. It does not replace them. If you want AI to become part and parcel to what you're doing in business, you need to augment and not replace, because that gets rid of the pushback, the resistance. And I say that because here's another plea. Don't call it artificial intelligence, call it augmented intelligence. It really rings a lot better. We've also done not only search, but classification. And in this place, we were able to replace those people who are just quality checkers anyway. So when an examiner gets something that's already been classified by artificial intelligence, he is the final check on that quality, whether or not it really is him. You know, if you have a basket weaving maneuver and it gets to the biomedical guy, obviously the algorithm was wrong. So we're not going to go forward on those things. We have feedback loops. And that's another thing. If you let algorithms go off the rails, that's your problem. You have to have people in the loop. I do not believe in unsupervised learning. Supervised learning is the only way to go with algorithms. It's the only way to go to ensure that you do a red face test and you say to yourself, oh my God, is that really the way it should be? Or should we go right or left? And you let the examiner do that, relative rankings, up and down. And then the algorithm is trained for the examiner, not necessarily for the general public. And that's a big difference as well, when you get it customized to your personal preferences. So, without further ado, I'm going to be followed by my colleague, the CIO, André Mendes from the Department of Commerce.
It's funny that the two guys from the government are the only ones wearing white shirts with ties. Go figure. All right. So, from Darwin to superhumans, AI role. I'm not going to be talking like a guy from the government. I'm going to talk about something different. So, a few disclaimers. My thoughts are mine alone. Got it? No mention of a company constitutes an endorsement. Got it? Caveat emptor. If I mention something you specify in the stock, that's your problem. You heard about it from the best advisors about the past, present, future, right? If you're at this conference, you're seeing some unbelievable presentation. I would like to give you something different. A different long-term perspective. Okay? I'm going to go real fast because I only have 10 minutes. Okay? Let's see. And let's see if this works if I walk around. So, an accelerating evolutionary road. Absolutely incredible, right? Prokaryotes, single cells, to sentiency, about 3.5 to 4 billion years. Okay? That's a long period of time, right? But then from sentiency to us, Homo sapiens sapiens, 7 million years. That's very fast. From Homo sapiens sapiens to ENIAC, which is generally recognized as the first general purpose computer, 300,000 years. Holy mackerel, we're really accelerating, right? From ENIAC to a computer called HPE Frontier, which I'll talk about later, that executes at 1.2 exaflops, and we'll talk about what that means, only 77 years. So, the question is, from HPE Frontier to engineered science, sentience, how long is it going to be? And at this point, I can tell you nobody knows. Nobody knows. But I'm sure it's going to be shorter than 77 years. Far shorter timelines, far faster progress, right? And I'll leave you with one question to start with and one to end. Are we engineered sentiency? How are we different from machine learning? You have neurons, they establish connectivity, they have access to an enormous amount of information, and the only thing is they have a really slow engine compared with computers. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same principles, huh? Interesting. Now, at the same time, a rise in human longevity. Homo habilis, 20 to 30. They died like nobody's business. Brutish life, infant mortality, the elements out in the heat, right? In the Middle Ages, not a lot of progress. 30 to 40. Agriculture, some medical knowledge starting to arise, some trade. Actually, the first record of an OBGYN type environment with a couple of doctors. Unbelievable, right? 1900 London, the most advanced city in the world at that time. Life expectancy was a mere 45 to 50. People were not lasting very long, right? Nutrition, hygiene, developing medical know-how got them from 30 to 40, from 45 to 50. It was still ridiculous, right? 1950 in the US, 70. That's a huge jump. Huge jump, right? What do you think is the main reason why that happened? It will surprise you. Sewer systems. Clean water. Then the arrival of antibiotics, vaccines, pasteurization, so that your milk wouldn't kill you. Neonatality care, because a lot of the problems with longevity is the fact that a lot of kids were dying at a very early stage, right? At birth, and sometimes in the next 2 weeks. 2019, 78.9. Remarkable change, right? So, modern meds, modern medicine, medication, radiology, nutrition, safety, the genome, weather-related deaths down by 90%, right? But then all of a sudden, 2020, 77.8, the first significant decline in a long-term time, right? All by external factors. COVID-19, drug use and suicide, right? 2050, here's my prediction. In the US, 120 and 85 will be the split among wealth level. Because with AI and with medications, with nanotechnology, with biotechnology, there's going to be this fork on the road that's going to be like nobody's business. Now, there have always been that kind of diversion amongst wealth levels from the beginning of time. But this will be something to behold. I'm not saying it's good, by the way. I'm just saying it is. Okay? And inward migration, what do I mean by that? It used to be that environmental and shelter and fire were the things that got us going. External medications like amputations, excisions, tooth extractions, right, prevented additional infections, saved lives. Civilizational advances, sewer and clean water. Internal medications, you see we're starting to move from the outside to the inside. Antibiotics, chemotherapy, the statins that a lot of us are taking these days because of cholesterol, vitamins, right? All of a sudden, 10, 20 years ago, we start seeing intracellular therapies. Processes like endocytosis, use of peptides, viral vectors, nanoparticles. Believe it or not, the Moderna vaccine for COVID-19 contains nanoparticles that actually deal with the coronavirus and with the actual spike corona. Did you know that? Nope. Interesting. By the way, they're also programmable. DNA, RNA altering techniques, gene replacements, gene editing, and gene silencing. Because sometimes when you have a gene that is overexpressing, that can create all kinds of problems. So if you can go in and silence it, then you avoid those problems from taking place. Now, there's a new technology. How many of you have heard of CRISPR? Oh, quite a few. Great. Okay, it stands for cluster and regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. Don't say that fast. Right? But what does it mean? I'm going to put it in very simple terms because Jamie told me I needed to explain it to my grandmother. It's word processing for DNA. Okay, move this part over, put something else in, boom, there it is, new functionality. Okay, so curing blindness, a worthwhile achievement, right? There's a condition called Leber congenital amaurosis 2. Mutations create an environment where RPE65 does not get produced. What does RPE65 do? It detects light. With the inability to detect light, you are blind. Interestingly enough, it's a single gene, a single protein that can resolve this, right? So, enter a company called Luxturna, and they sell a healthy copy of the mutated gene. What happens? An injection between the retina and the epithelium, and partial vision is restored. but it's temporary. Because over time, it sort of fades into the background of fluids and everything else. We need a permanent fix. We know the problem. We know the solution. How do we engineer a permanent fix? Enter CRISPR. We fix the DNA itself in the eye, right? So, sorry about that. Trials are underway with advanced patients that are blind already, so there's nothing to lose. Interestingly enough, even with blind patients, they're only testing in one eye. The power of protocols, right? So, driven by infinite power. 2001, top 500 supercomputer leaders. Who knows the top 500 list? It's published twice a year. It lists the fastest supercomputers in the world. 2001, the IBM Ashley White, 7,226 gigaflops. What's a gigaflop? It's a billion floating point operations per second. And if you can comprehend that, you're a far better individual than I am. But this is nothing. Because 2023 just published in June, top 500 supercomputer leaders, the HP frontier that I talked about earlier, 1.2 exaflops, 1.2 billion gigaflops. You get that? It is a quintillion floating point operations per second. And no human being can understand that. There are two new ones coming out in the next few months, Aurora and El Capitan, which has to be the best supercomputer ever. They will reach 2 exaflops this year. So that's 2 quintillion floating point operations per second. Okay? Barriers to entry drop dramatically. With this kind of computing power, two things happen. One, you can do massive calculations up at the top for the most complex systems in the world and problems in the world. But the other thing is, all the pricing for computers that perform incredibly fast, but not at that level, drop. So it becomes easy for people to actually invest in a computer for $10 million, for $20 million, which for an organization that's dealing with artificial intelligence and biotechnology and genetics is not a big deal. And so this becomes a boon for open source efforts, which you're seeing today in AI. Absolute boon, right? Rapid AI acceleration. This is what happens with innovation. You let the masses go at it, and all the new thoughts come in of the people that do not realize that they have limits. And when you don't realize you have limits, boom, the future is yours. An equal boon for rogue operators, which means that every single positive thing that comes out of this could also generate a very negative thing that comes out of it. Because not everybody in the world is nice. In case you did not know. Okay? And by the way, this is before a new technology called quantum computing matures. Quantum computing is the next stage in computing. There will be It is unbelievable. It's completely impossible for you to realize what's going on, right? We have an AI-driven medical nirvana on our way. You heard about the genome and genetics. The next level is called epigenetics, because that's what happens after the genome starts expressing itself, right? So the proteome, which is the proteins, the study of the proteins that get generated, a process like glycosylation, which is what happens to proteins when they start interacting with your environment, and protein folding, one of the most complex environments in the world. Now, the latest AI technology is able to do predictions of protein folding at 87 to 89% of exactness of reality. And that is an astonishing development, because even the best students couldn't get there 40%, right? And so we see an optimized therapy progression. You all remember compounds, aspirin, and things like that. You know what happened? They would go into nature, get a compound, bring it to the laboratory, test it against all kinds of things to see if it had any effect. And if it did, you test it for toxicity, and then you'd bring it to market. That process took 15 years and $800 million. Okay? Next thing, biological. We started to develop medications that are actually existent in the human body and that are adapted, compounds that are in the human body that are adapted to treat certain conditions. And that's why you see this explosion of all these treatments, especially for psoriasis. How many of you seen ads for psoriasis on TV, right? You will notice that they all end with MAB, monoclonal antibodies, okay? And that's a whole new game, because all of a sudden they can bring them to market at a much lower cost, because they're already tested for toxicity, basically, and much faster. The next one, pharmacogenomics. Okay, give me 2 minutes. All right, pharmacogenomics. This is where you actually design a medication for a specific protein and genetic expression, right? For example, if you're a woman, and if you have a HER2 gene, you are going to get Herceptin if you have breast cancer, because it's specifically for that condition. What's the next layer? Individual formulations. In the future, medications will actually be designed for your genome, for your specific genetic material, not everybody else's. And that's a dramatic situation. DNA optimization, desirable traits. You heard of eidetic memory? Those kind of people that can remember everything that they wore 15 years ago. Oh, yeah, I was wearing a polo and khaki shorts when I met Arnold Schwarzenegger, at 3:45 in the afternoon at a tennis tournament. Okay, imagine that you could have that gene spliced with CRISPR into your DNA. Imagine that you can have the gene for fast twitch so that we can all become Usain Bolt. Imagine the gene for IQ so we can all become Einsteins. These genes are out there. They're expressing themselves. When you have massive databases like 23andMe and everything else like that, and massive computational environment, you can do those correlations and figure out what's going on. All right? So customized superhuman, believe it or not, right around the corner. Now that might be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, but it's going to be here. Because some of us, and I don't mean me, I mean human beings, are already somewhat superhuman. There are people taking incredible amounts of medication, spending billions of dollars in order to get to the next level of humankind. Nanomachines, the concept that was introduced in 1986 by Eric K. Drexler, a multidisciplinary out of MIT, in a book called Engines of Creation. Basically, the ability to create nanorobots that are self-replicating and go into every single one of your cells and bring your DNA back to the level it was when you were 18. Therefore, ensuring what? Immortality. Okay? So there you go. Always ruthless. From best of show to gone, short period of time. Australopithecus is gone. Abilis gone. Erectus gone. Neanderthals gone. Once you're at the top, next thing you know, you're going to be at the bottom. Current acme, us. Homo sapiens sapiens. Next acme, machina sapiens sapiens. And what that means for human beings, we do not know. Philosophically speaking, is it inherently bad for the universe if we are eventually replaced by either a hybrid or a total machine-related intelligence? And that's all I have to say.